How do you approach testing and validating network changes? Things like new configurations, new overlay VPNs, software upgrades, or any change that needs to be deployed in the network. Bruce, can this testing function be automated in any way?
Yeah, so I guess this is the whole concept of bringing CI/CD or continuous integration, continuous deployment, or continuous delivery, depending on how you define it, to the networking world. And of course, you can't just blindly take that concept and say, well, we're going to do this for networking. There's places where it makes more sense, and I think things like upgrades are actually a great one. But I think to your point around emulation, right? There's an issue with there's a caveat to doing this kind of thing in the networking world, in that you have your configuration, the thing that makes up how your network element or your controller acts a certain way. But one thing that is very hard to model is the environment, the world in which that network element lives in. And we often refer to this as state, like what routes have you received from neighbors? Which interfaces are actually operationally up? And if you can't model these accurately, then you can't really do proper CI/CD, as it were, for networking. So again, in Nokia, this has been a big focus for us in our digital sandbox, in that we want to try and give an environment to our customers that allows them to simulate as close to real world as they possibly can, for them to do change control. So, the basic flow here you can imagine is someone wants to do an upgrade, or wants to deploy a routing policy change, or wants to do some other change to their network. They should have some environment in which they can test this change before they deploy it into production, right? And today they do. They have labs. So, you have a lab environment, you run a change in there first before you run it into production. The problem with that is someone has to write the method of procedure to deploy the change. Someone has to write some tests to test the change. It's often done all manually, and the work is often thrown away or put into some archive for the next time you have to do that change. Whereas the approach that we've seen in the application world is, if I'm going to make a change and write some tests to support that change, why not have these tests go into some kind of central repository, some kind of CI framework, as it will. And when I make other changes, I can run those same tests. So I think we're going to see more and more of this in the networking world, where it could be as simple as spinning up a container of the NOS you're going to push config to, and make sure it actually accepts the config before you do that in production, right? I mean, that's a simple, easy to set up validation that gives you some degree of certainty that the change is going to work when you deploy it into production. And ideally, all this gets wrapped up, so you don't actually know that it's happening. You push a change to production, and there is a process in which the change is automatically tested and automatically deployed, very, very similar to, quote unquote, proper CI/CD that we would see in the application side of the world. So yeah, I think having the right environment to test these changes is important. Having the actual workflow, the I'm going to start with an input to my system, and ideally an output into production, and having that all automated, having automated testing occur. I think this is the only way change at scale, and I'm not talking, workloads being deployed, because of course that's a very machine-to-machine interaction. It's all the human-to-machine interactions are the ones we need to be a little careful of. And I think we'll start to see these CI/CD concepts apply more and more to them. I don't know if you agree with that, PJ, or you have a different spin.
Well, I mean, as a destination and as a aspiration to drive at, in terms of an operational end game, it's really quite, it's a combination of sophisticated and appropriate. And because it has an automated framework, it lends itself to being well managed and well controlled in that regard. And I think one of the really great benefits of the paradigm or the model that we're discussing here is that the practice of being able to evaluate change dynamically in this manner, and having people from multiple areas of responsibility take part in that process. Having operations managers and engineers, fully participate in the observability of what are we talking about from a change, in a change impact point of view, in combination with a design engineer or architect or a developer. So breaking down that wall and reducing the distance in thinking and in understanding between me, who's supporting the network full time from a responsibility point of view, and wanting to manage those changes well. I think incorporating integrating the workflow more fully in this regard is a huge change from prior mode of operation, and a huge opportunity for reducing the risk of introducing CI/CD to networking. So this is a non-trivial gain that that can be achieved.
Yeah,
is one perspective on that. I also like the notion that you can decide in a given evaluation whether you want to look at an impact of a subset of the deployment that you have, or the entirety of a deployment, as the functionality evolves. It makes it possible to look at different levels of change, which is reality. And I think that building that into the lifecycle management capabilities of a Fabric implementation is quite powerful.